Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of my Count Dooku fighting record and analysis series. So in this series, I'm going to be doing 4 parts, 4 separate videos, to go over all of Count Dooku's fights in on-screen Star Wars canon. I did part 1 back in October of 2022, and that covers all of Count Dooku's fights in Tales of the Jedi. You can find that video on my channel, and I'll put it in the end screen at the end of this video so y'all can see it. Today, I'm going to be doing part 2, which covers all of Count Dooku's fights in Attack of the Clones. And I'm going to have my buddy Frank join me to analyze the fights. So first, let's go over some details about Count Dooku and how I'm going to be analyzing these fights. Then, we'll dive into analyzing the fights themselves. So, Count Dooku, of course, is a human male, and he was previously affiliated with the Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic, but then he fell to the dark side and became a Sith Lord and became the head of the Separatists. And he stands at 6 feet, 4 inches tall. Now, here I have an explanation of just kind of how I'm going to be categorizing these fights. Of course, I have all the fights that I will be including on Dooku's record. So these are all just fair fights where Dooku won, lost, or drew the fight. And then, of course, I have excluded fights. So these are fights that are significantly unfair. So I'm not going to put it on Dooku's record because they're not fair fights, either in his favor or against him. And just to clarify, fights do not have to be perfectly fair, but any fights with extreme advantages or disadvantages present will be excluded unless Dooku wins despite having a disadvantage or loses despite having an advantage. So if Dooku has a huge disadvantage, yet he overcomes it and wins anyways, then I'm going to count that for him. And then if he has a huge, unfair advantage, but he still manages to lose, then I'll still count that as a loss. But anyways, that should clarify everything with how I'm going to be categorizing the fights. Let's go ahead and start analyzing the fights themselves. Alright, so Count Dooku's first fight in Attack of the Clones, which is fight number 4 overall for him, is against Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker together. This is the first time he takes on the duo, and this is a massive victory for Dooku, of course. He completely wipes the floor with both of them. And this is a fight that I'm considering as one, both Obi-Wan and Anakin engage together. Anakin's disposed of really quickly, and then Dooku engages Obi-Wan and is able to beat him. Then just before he, deals a fatal blow, Anakin jumps back in to, save Obi-Wan. But then, of course, after a little while, Dooku takes Anakin out as well. So one whole fight, but a massive victory for Dooku. Frank, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess I can say a couple positive things about Obi-Wan in that fight. He was able to block Count Dooku's lightning attack. So it is pretty impressive considering that right before that it was able to knock Anakin unconscious. And I guess maybe we can agree that Anakin did a little bit better than Obi-Wan. Uh, that of course doesn't mean that he was better. That's kind of debatable, but he I think his style matched up better against Dooku. Because Obi-Wan is kind of more defensive, and Count Dooku's form 2 Makashi is kind of good at penetrating someone's defense because it's very very precise and
Yeah.
methodical.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's something you kind of see as the clone, after this, as, you go throughout the Clone Wars, Anakin really becomes actually the better fighter against Dooku. Like, he has more success fighting Dooku than Obi-Wan. I think a lot of it is because of what you're talking about. I think Anakin's much more offensive style actually kind of matches up better with Dooku, whereas Obi-Wan's more defensive style is something that kind of Dooku can, penetrate and, beat. So I agree with that assessment. At this point, obviously Obi-Wan is much more experienced, so Anakin's kind of much younger and less experienced at this point, which kind of, allows Obi-Wan to, kind of have a little more composure. But I agree with you. I think you can definitely already see in the making the fact that Anakin is going to be a stylistic problem for Dooku moving forward. But of course, Dooku still gets the decisive win here, wipes the floor, both of them really. So that's fight 4, a resounding victory for Count Dooku. Now, fight number 5. This is the second and final fight in Attack of the Clones for Count Dooku. So only 2 fights we're going over in part 2 here. And that fight, of course, as everyone should know, is against Yoda, Jedi Grandmaster Yoda, legendary Jedi, probably the most legendary Jedi of all time. And finally, we have someone who can put Dooku in his place. Yoda gets, in my opinion, a very decisive victory over Dooku. Not saying Dooku can't hold his ground against Yoda. Dooku's very powerful, and he demonstrates that here in this fight, but it's very clear that both as a duelist and in using the Force, Dooku simply just isn't on Yoda's level. So I think Yoda definitely schools Dooku here, reminds him who the real master is, and takes home a victory. So this would be Dooku's first loss on his record. But how do you feel about this one, Frank?
I mean, we can definitely agree here that it was a lot more competitive than the last one we can say that we discussed in this
Hmm.
video. Um, but it's kind of, at least in the movie, it looked like it was more competitive in the Force than in the duel. Because even though Dooku was able to keep up just enough, not quite in the pace, but he was able to defend, to find some not really effective counters, but counter opportunities. And
Yeah.
although Yoda was able to block everything, and he was, pushing a lot bigger pace, a lot heavier pace, and had a positional advantage. He was a lot more aggressive, active, and Dooku escaped at the end. So even though it does not always mean that you're losing, here I think it's pretty accurate to say that he had a reason to to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and yeah, definitely Yoda is the victor here.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, running doesn't necessarily mean you lose a fight, but in this case, we both agree, yeah, for sure. Dooku realized intelligently that he was not going to be able to defeat Yoda, so he knew he had to, cause the distraction by, putting Obi-Wan and Anakin in danger, so Yoda would have to stop to save them, which gave Dooku an opportunity to leave. So Dooku's first loss here on his record, but I would say a very respectable loss, considering that he was going against one of the most powerful beings to ever live in the Star Wars galaxy in Yoda. So I would not say it's embarrassing at all to lose to Yoda, considering that pretty much every living being in the Star Wars galaxy would lose to Yoda in a fight. So yeah, but again, fight number 5 is Dooku's first loss, but I would say a very respectable loss to Jedi Grandmaster Yoda. So now here I have listed all of Count Dooku's fights in Tales of the Jedi and Attack of the Clones. 5 total, the first 3 being from Tales of the Jedi, which I cover in part 1, and then the latter 2 from Attack of the Clones, which I just covered in this video. And from all 5 of these fights, Count Dooku emerges with 4 wins, 1 loss, and 0 draws. Which is really impressive considering, especially how powerful his opponents were, at least 3, 4, and 5 being very tough opponents. His only loss coming, against Yoda, which of course I'm very happy about. Good that Yoda was able to put Dooku in his place. Um, but of course, plenty more fights to come, so definitely stay tuned for parts 3 and 4, and we will continue to add to this awesome list. Thank you all so much for watching.